Hi, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be looking at the upcoming Formula 2 season, teams, drivers and my opinions on how they're likely to do this season. Now, there are some notable changes from previous years, with the format changing from a 2-race weekend to a 3-race weekend, which is great. Qualifying shall come from a single session on the Friday, with 2 sprint races on the Saturday, race 1 of which takes the qualifying result and reverses the top 10, and the second race which takes the results from the first race and reverses the top 10 of that. Which, to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of. I understand the principle of reverse grids to increase excitement as the theoretically faster cars fight their way through, but to have 2 reverse grids in 3 races, to me, just nah. The point of the sport is to reward excellence, and for me this just isn't it. But that said, me ranting about it won't change it, and I'm sure the races will still be very exciting. It's just kind of a step too far for me. Importantly though, the main race last year, which traditionally was after qualifying on a Saturday, has moved to the Sunday for this year, and that runs in the order they qualified in and has more points on offer than the sprint races, so hopefully that should balance it out a bit. As a general observation, I'm not expecting quite as much from the rookies this season either. Last year, Felipe Drugovich made the point that he was making the jump a season earlier than he might have done because last season the wheel size changed, which meant that no driver had an advantage of experience of that wheel size tyre type. This season though, that's not the case, and returning drivers will have a little bit of extra experience, but still, drivers like Oscar Piastri and Teo Pourchaire certainly aren't to be dismissed. Anyway, on with the discussion. The battle of the F3 champions at Prema are in kind of a reverse from last year, with Schwartzman now the one of a year's experience against last season's F3 champion. Now, we know these guys are capable of winning titles and driving for last year's championship winners. Schwartzman especially has to be considered the favourite if he can just get some of that 2019 level consistency he had. There's lots of drivers on the grid who can win races, not least his teammate, but being at the sharp end on a regular basis, that will make the difference. Piastri clearly has the talent, winning back-to-back championships in Formula Renault and F3, but F2 Prema doesn't have the advantage that F3 Prema had, and it is a stacked grid, with most of the top drivers having a year's experience with the car, so a title challenge I think for him is probably a big ask. A team that stepped up to challenge the accepted top teams in recent years, growing out of the Russian time team, UNI Virtuosi is definitely aiming to stake a claim at the title, and Guan Yu Zhao, they have probably the most experienced driver on the grid, who on his day can be very hard to beat. The biggest question mark is over consistency, because as a driver he's always flattered to deceive a little bit, with impressive results kind of getting lost in incident, unremarkable drives and occasional bad luck. Over time these have lessened, and he's a genuine championship contender, but he needs to be on his A game every weekend to put himself in contention. Felipe Drugovich has moved over from MP Motorsport, where last season they had their strongest season ever, and has more than done enough to put to bed his disastrous 2019 F3 season. Wanting to make the F2 jump early so that he didn't lose out on experience of the larger wheels, he's now in a good position to maximise on that. But he needs to gain consistency, as last season he had a tendency to either kind of win or be nowhere. With an arguably stronger team around him in the car, which finished second in the championship last season, he needs to make the most of this opportunity, because with private funding and not being part of a junior outfit, the next step is challenging, but he might not have the finances to be at the sharp end for another season. Now, Carlin are a team that kind of struggle from consistency, with their finishing positions tending to yo-yo from championship winning team to lower midfield and back again. Their F2 form has certainly been stronger than their F3 form though, and last season Yuki Tsunoda was one of the standout performers. Chanda Ravala was reported to have an issue with an underpowered engine last season, and providing the mechanicals are all working correctly this year, he's a proven race winner that can compete at the sharp end. If he can't win the championship, there's still the battle to be top Red Bull Junior to win, as that would appear to be his best route to F1. But that dream can quickly disintegrate if the results don't happen. Someone who knows all about what can happen if you don't get the results Red Bull want is the Ravala's teammate Dan Ticktum. a driver whose reputation for controversy kinda goes before him. In 2017-2018 he was almost a shoo-in for a Formula 1 driver in the future, but 2019 was something of a disaster, and 2020 left several questions unanswered. He certainly has the pace to be a challenger for a title, but it's something he's never actually won. We expect to hear more team radio from him than from any other driver, as Sky look to find more controversy from him instead of looking at his results. But he's good enough that he could certainly challenge for race wins and a title, providing he doesn't make it difficult for himself. The other two Red Bull interests on the grid are racing for Hi-Tech this season. Now, Hi-Tech are an up-and-coming and ambitious British team who, in my head, have the potential for a big rivalry with Carlin, which is probably just in my head. But last season was their first year in F2, and they did better than I thought they might. This year, they're a driver lineup comprising two very talented Red Bull juniors, who I kind of feel have been a bit overlooked. Yuri Vips made some cameos for Dams midway through last season, but stepping into a series, especially one as competitive as F2 midway through, is always going to be a tough ask. He did a decent job improving all the time. This year he'll be looking to put what was kind of a wasted 2020 behind him and remind people what he can do with full years racing in a series. You know, in 2019 in F3 he was the top non-Prema driver, and yeah, there really should be an award for that in F3 because they're ridiculously dominant. You know, previously he's won the German ADAC F4 series. You know, he should do well. Next to him is another up-and-coming talent. With less experience in F2 and in general than Vips, you'd be forgiven for thinking Liam Lawson may well just play a supporting role this season, you know, especially with the distraction of DTM, which he'll be competing in. But Lawson's an incredibly quick driver. In series he's competed in previously, he's always looked like someone who could get a win. And unfortunately, he's been known to get involved in a few crashes and have a few off days as well, so over a season, I think that Vips should have his number, but Lawson will have races where he shines. ART. ART are one of the most successful teams in GP2 and F2 history, but they've kind of earned an unfortunate reputation as a team who will back one driver and forget the other, which is how it appears from the outside anyway. Whatever's going on with the team is another matter. But with a driver lineup of Christian Lundgaard in his second season with the team and the immensely talented Teo Pourchaire, you would hope for a solid year for both drivers, as that lineup could secure them the team's championship and drivers if they both had a fair shot at it and both had support. Lundgaard is a massive talent, but he'll have a job on his hands keeping ahead of his quick young teammate who was with the team in F3 last year, finishing second only to Oscar Piastri in the championship ahead of the other two Premas, which is kind of, as I said with you, Vips, is a bit of an achievement in itself. Will both drivers be given a shot at success this year, or after 3 rounds will they find themselves in the situation we've kind of come to expect, unfortunately, in recent years? It'd be a shame for either of them, to be honest with you. I mean, look, I'm a fan of both Jack Aitken and Marcus Armstrong, so I'm kind of cross with ART about how this sort of thing seems to have played out in recent years. But to avoid this turning into a rant, I'll move on. A team who have been at the sharp end and won multiple titles during their GP2 and F2 history, the Dams driver lineup in the last couple of years hasn't perhaps looked the most convincing. This year comes more of the same. The formula from last year continues with the token pay driver that no one expects much from and the driver with a point to prove. Now, the surprise last season with Ryan Asani was that there were a couple of rounds where he didn't look out of place. With a team like Dan's, he could actually potentially shake off this only there because of the cash reputation. To be honest, I'm more invested in his teammate. I've actively cheered on Marcus Armstrong since 2017 and genuinely believe he's a genuine talent. But last season can't be seen as anything other than a disaster, and if anyone was seeing him for the first time, judging him on those results, he has so much more to give, and I really hope that we'll see that this season. I kind of feel harsh lumping a couple of these teams into this bottom group, as I genuinely have a lot of respect. Well, for all of the teams. Competing at that level is hard, but shout out to MP Motorsport and Campos Racing, who we'll look at first. Now, MP last season had their best season ever from as long as I've watched it, taking multiple wins. And expecting more of the same from this season is an ask. Liram Zendelli is a driver who's won the ADAC F4 Championship, but has kind of struggled to replicate that success since. If you can gel with the car, then the points are definitely on. The second seat MP Motorsport has only been announced this week, with long-time MP driver Richard Verschoor getting the shout for Bahrain, and hopefully more. He wants to race with them, they want him, but you get the feeling it comes down to budget, and the quick Dutchman doesn't have much of one. I can't help feeling that their best hope for a strong result will be maximising a reverse grid result. And with Campos, it's kind of a similar story. Respectable driver lineup with Roush Boschon, who's decent, and the talented rookie Gianluca Petikov, but neither of them bring much, if anything, in the way of budget, and it's kind of the lifeblood of racing. I don't want to say it, but I can see one of them potentially getting replaced mid-season. They have the talent to snatch some point-scoring positions, but if Jack Aitken struggled last season to get regular point-scoring positions, they'll kind of again be hoping to maximise reverse grid races, but there will be multiple no scores, I suspect. Now, Trident are one of racing's great mysteries. In GP3 and F3, they've had multiple seasons where they've been the only team who's looked like they could take it to first ART in GP3 and then Premier last season in F3. But F2 for them has been underwhelming. Whether it's simply a case of lacking the investment necessary to punch a decent level in F2, I don't know. Because, getting to the next level is tricky. It's rather likely that drivers Marino Sato and Ben Viscal will have a difficult time achieving meaningful results in that car, unfortunately. I don't think they'll finish last in the championship, but if recent years have been anything to go by, it's going to be a tough gig. Charisse Racing Systems. There's always an interesting question as to how good a driver David Beckman is. I'm not convinced we've necessarily seen the best to what he's absolutely capable of. With the budget I suspect he might have, I don't think we ever will. I kind of expect him to be heading the Trident home, maybe hanging on to the MP guys, but not really any higher. His teammate Samaya is viewed as something of a Roy Nissany in so much as his performances don't perhaps justify an F2 seat. In his second year in the sport, can he change that perception? I'm not convinced, but we'll find out. HWA Race Labs, well, that's an interesting one. They failed to impress last year, and the signing of Alessio De Leda in particular shows a shocking lack of ambition. A couple of years ago, this was the team that won races with Anton Hubert. Matteo Nannini, I feel, has some potential, but seems to be rushing himself through series instead of taking time and putting together a serious F3 effort, for example, which I think his energies would be far better spent on. De Leda, well, it's difficult to say something constructive because he's seen as such a joke, albeit something of a dangerous, crash-happy one. Whatever his racing level is, he's not F2 level, and on a good day he might maybe be comic relief, but expectations are quite frankly so low, you can only wonder at how financially struggling HWA must be, because there's no real explanation for it. Trying not to progress that rant any further, I'm going to be done. I'm looking forward to the season as always. There are so many strong drivers and exciting lineups and potentially exciting side stories going on. What do you think? What are you looking forward to the most? Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching. So until next time, take care.